Hi, I am Helena, and my drag name is King Hoberon, and I am going to be talking a bit about makeup today, generally how I approach drag makeup, some tips or ideas that I have for what I personally do, in case that is of interest or helpful for anyone. I have a time lapse of me doing a look the other week, which isn't, obviously it's not like a tutorial, but can give an idea of sort of the process I might go through when doing a face. So I guess the first thing I would say is that I wouldn't call myself that sort of look heavy. I really enjoy doing drag makeup and doing faces, but also very much sort of tend to make it up as I go along. I won't usually go into doing a face with any huge plan or scheme of where it's going. You who have seen any of my drag will know that I tend to do quite a few different things. I started out doing drag king, looks most known for the character Tobias Benjamin, which is quite like a kind of classic drag king face, in that it's, as far as drag can be, it's kind of a more like naturalistic look. And then I started trying out queen makeup as well, and then along the way have done various sort of androgynous looks that are a bit more off the wall, I guess. So as I said, I do tend to really make it up as I go along when I'm doing makeup. What I will tend to do if I'm going to do a look is think about maybe what sort of thing I want to do. I mean, am I doing king, queen, something else? And then I will probably Google image some ideas. So for the hot mess night in February, I did a seal themed number. Suddenly realised on the night that I was going to have to try and do seal makeup but also drag makeup, and so for that I googled seal makeup on Google Images, which had a variety of results. I took inspiration from bits of different sort of ideas that are on Google Images and then tried to drag it up a bit. So I will often Google image search and have that up while I'm doing a look as kind of a reference point or something to take ideas from. Instagram is another one that if I see makeup, be it drag or not, that I think is really cool or I might want to take some inspiration from, I will save that. So I have a collection on my Instagram for makeup inspiration, which can be helpful to look back on as well. If I know I want to do a face but I'm not sure what I want to do, I can refer back to that to try and give me inspiration. And again, it will never turn out like the photo I'm looking at, because I just don't have the sort of artistic skill to like recreate someone else's look, but it will give me ideas or new thoughts about what I'm doing. So I thought I'd talk briefly about my kind of essential products for different things that I do. So I started out, I said, doing drag king makeup, and my friend and I, the first time we did it, we literally googled, I think, drag king contour, and there was a particular image that came up that kind of illustrated in makeup terms what would be traditionally feminine contour and what would be traditionally masculine contour, and I found that really helpful for both drag king and queen stuff, in terms of if I was looking to recreate those like traditionally gendered face shapes, then it's quite a helpful image to use. For drag king makeup, I tend to use quite like, yeah, everyday products, stuff that I very much already had for the rare occasions that I was doing like everyday makeup on myself for an occasion. Obviously none of this is sponsored, so this is just like what I have and what I use that works for me. So I have the Revlon Colour Stay foundation. I don't love having makeup on, which sounds counterintuitive for a drag artist, but I don't love the feeling of heavy things on my skin, which is partially why I do a lot of like weird looks, because that often means I can get away with wearing less makeup. But yeah, so Revlon Colour Stay foundation, which is what I'd usually do first, put that all over my face, and then mark out contour lines with Barry M contour. So I do, sort of contour here around my nose, chin, forehead, using the image that I spoke about, and blend that out with some highlighter sort of here and here to kind of create that more like chiseled cheekbone, and here to emphasize the forehead contour. And I'd usually either do this classily with my fingers or sometimes with a foundation brush. Again, because I've never been like a big makeup guru, I tend to just use kind of the brushes that I always had. Having said that, one exception is that I did buy an angled brush a little while ago, a couple of years ago, which has been helpful, and I use that for eyebrows. And I just use a brown Benefit eyeshadow to fill in my eyebrows. So I use, oh God, I feel like a vlogger. I use this brown eyeshadow and an angled brush to really go over my eyebrows. And for Drag King makeup, what I tend to do is the sort of peak in my eyebrows here that I would usually be looking to emphasize if I was doing queen makeup or everyday makeup on myself. I try and fill that in to give my eyebrows less shape. Also use a eyebrow comb. So I just have a Revolution brush, which is quite like a quite an effective brush. Like it's quite a, sounds like the wrong word, but it's quite a heavy duty comb. And you can see it really does like brush the hairs. So for both king and queen, if I'm using my natural eyebrows, that can be really helpful. And then if I was doing a king face that was slightly more like conceptual or abstract, then a lot of different things you can do involve glitter facial hair. Can be really nice for adding like a bit of fun to the look. So I've done before sort of red facial hair and red glittery eyebrows. And in terms of facial hair, I would tend to use the same eyeshadow that I'd use to fill in my eyebrows, and the angled brush again, and Google image certain types of facial hair and again try and copy the shape of those. And also, as everyone does, like I have a moustache, so I for moustache I would tend to just like follow the shape of the one I already have and fill that in. And then for queen makeup, I would say for me there were sort of some products that when I got them it made the process a lot easier and made it more possible to achieve the kind of looks I was going for. So I first tried drag queen makeup just with whatever products I had, and I really noticed a difference when I got some more sort of purposeful items, I guess. And so the first few times I did drag makeup, I did it following along with Lucy Garland's tutorial. For me, it was a really helpful introduction into how to cover your eyebrows, how to contour and highlight, and stuff like that. And I've always found that a really good base to return to. In terms of products, I think one that made a big difference for me was getting a Krylon TV paint stick. So it is like quite a classic drag product that a lot of drag performers use, but obviously not everyone because different things work for everyone. But for me, I found that having the thick, having a thick made for purpose foundation made eyebrow covering and making my face like a base so much easier. In terms of eyebrow covering, I just use Pritt Stick, and as I said, there are a lot of videos out there like Lucy Garland's that tell you about eyebrow covering. Also getting a highlighter, I got it from Krylon again, that was quite heavy duty, and these are never things I would ever wear if I was going to an event not in drag, because they really are thick, but are really helpful for me in creating those kind of solid bases. And then I think the other product that really made a difference for me was getting baking powder. So again, this is just like Superdrug Maybelline white setting powder, but for baking, highlight, that made a big difference for me. So I think those three things, the foundation, highlighter and baking powder, were the things that I felt were most helpful for me to buy. Because then in terms of other things like lipstick, fake eyelashes, eyebrow pencils, I've never felt the need to get anything that specialist other than just what I can find in Superdrug or Boots or whatever. And for drag queen makeup, I tend to use like triangle sponges to blend. And again, Lucy Garland talks quite a lot about blending and tips for that. That's personally what I use, because they're like cheap and quite long lasting, and easily available. And then just a quick tiny tip, talking about eyebrows in drag queen makeup. Now again, this is a common theme. I don't love wearing lots of makeup, so I wouldn't always cover my eyebrows if I was doing drag queen makeup. Often I would just really accentuate the shape of my eyebrow, and fill that in very crisply to give it sort of as much of an arch as possible, because I already have quite a lot of space here. But if I was to cover my eyebrows, what I would then do is draw on new eyebrows that started like where my eyebrow already starts, because I think that really helps to create a face rather than starting above. I've always found it helpful, if I start naturally with my eyebrow and then can just draw it a bit higher than where my eyebrow naturally is to create more space, but without going sort of up to my forehead, because times that I've done that personally, it's not been a good time for me, because I just don't have enough of an artistic eye to draw them on without a guide. It's really helpful to use the shape of my own eyebrow. So that's just a little tip if you're struggling with eyebrows that you could try. Then in terms of like budget drag, as I've said, I've never been someone to be that into makeup or anything, and I think those few drag queen products are the main things that I've bought. I've not really much bought clothes specifically for drag. I think the best thing to do for drag on a budget is using what you have already in an interesting way, repurposing an item of clothing. I think one thing that helped me was buying a waist cincher, purely because it acts as a really good belt to put together other parts of an outfit. So for instance, wearing a waistcoat as a top, if I then have a cincher as like a thick belt, even if I'm not using it to cinch my waist at all, it makes the waistcoat into a v-neck top. Other than that, like just wearing whatever the hell you want in whatever way you want. I wore swimming flippers to a nightclub, and my old school swimming costume. Like, I think that is just completely valid drag, and you definitely don't need to spend money on it if you don't want to. Again, also in sort of budget terms and in terms of more like weird or less king or queeny makeup, face paint is a big one for me. People joke about it, but I do love a bit of Snazzaroo. There's this lovely old Snazzaroo I have, so this, this sort of drag I'm aiming for, but just with a number of colours in, and then I have a white and a black face paint, and I use that a lot. So for instance, at Queen's Drag of Descent night, I did that look using only blue face paint and white eyeliner, and then white fake eyelashes, and that was it really. Obviously that's cheap and also means I can get away with not wearing that much makeup, so it was comfortable and didn't take me ages either, which for me is really helpful. And also, like drugstore coloured eyeliners and things like that, that mean you can do really interesting and creative looks without spending lots on it. And again, the makeup you already have. So one of my drag mainstays is this beautiful Claire's palette I got when I was like 11. and I was all about the bright green. But again, like I still use this a lot of the times I do drag, because I love doing like weird stuff with bright colours, so that's really helpful. And again, I haven't bought eyeshadow since I was about 13 probably. So I think a lot of it is about remembering that whatever you're doing, if you are, you know, expressing yourself creatively, like that is and can be completely valid drag, and that's just as wonderful as what other people are doing. And whatever you're doing is valid and interesting and worthy, and I think you can do whatever you want with it, and create whatever you want with it, from dressing like a seal to being a public school boy to doing an uber feminine drag queen look. It's completely up to you, and whatever you do is valid. And coming from someone who was never ever historically good at makeup, you can do whatever the hell you want in drag, and it's just as good as someone else's.